this is Don Stevens again. We're going through a series of teachings on the book of Judges. We've covered the first three chapters of that book, and in this particular tape we're going to cover chapter 4 of the book of Judges. So here we go. And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord, when Ehud was dead. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, the king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Now this is the third apostasy. Seems as long as the judge who God raised up lived, the people obeyed the Lord. As soon as he died, people quickly forgot the Lord and moved back into their old ways, usually falling into those things of sin and worshiping false gods, etc. The same old thing. It's the same story over and over. Now Israel had already taken Hazor in an earlier battle, and that was back when Joshua was alive. However, they evidently didn't follow the instructions by cleaning out the entire area, because they allowed people to remain there. Jabin has now become strong, and he's put Israel to tribute. This again was the direct result of their failure, Israel's failure, to follow God's instructions. Now it would seem that it would be the northern tribes around the Galilee that were more affected by this king, because Hazor is just south of the Sea of Galilee, probably 5 to 7 miles north of the Sea of Galilee, and then up into the area of Upper Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is approximately 600 feet below sea level. The Upper Valley is above the Sea of Galilee, and Hazor is north, kind of towards Hermon. It's not a long distance. Now historically, Hazor was a very powerful city. There are vast excavations there, including a huge tell. It would be an exciting time for me just to visit that area. So God sold them into the hand of Jabin, the Canaanite, who was reigning in Hazor. And the captain of whose host was Sisera, who dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron. And for 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. Now, as we discussed in previous chapters in the book of Judges, these chariots of iron were equivalent to tanks in battle in those days. Now, these chariots of iron were formidable weapons against the infantry. Pulled by the horses, an infantry wouldn't have a chance against these chariots. And 900 chariots of iron was no small armament. Makes for a powerful brigade. Deborah the prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, who judged Israel at that time. She dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim, and the children of Israel would come unto her for judgment. Now this woman was a prophetess. It's interesting that she's really the first woman in the Bible that's mentioned in that way. If she was a judge in Israel, they would come to her for judgment on items of concern to the people. Now, she's indeed a prophetess, so she speaks the word of the Lord. And so she sent and called Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali, and she said unto him, Hath not the Lord God of Israel commanded, saying, Go and draw towards Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali, and of the children of Zebulun. And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into your hand. And Barak said unto her, If you will go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Now this was not a very brave gesture by this guy, was it? I mean, he wouldn't go to fight unless she went with him. And again, you see a man unwilling to trust the promise that God gave him for delivery of this battle. He turns to the flesh for help. and ask her to go with him. And so she said, I will surely go with you, notwithstanding the journey that you take shall not be for your honor. For the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And so Deborah arose and went with Barak into Kadesh. Again, here we see the lack of trust in the Lord, costing Barak the honor of the victory. The honor of this victory went to a woman, at least according to Deborah. So Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up with 10,000 men at his feet, and Deborah went up with him. Now Heber, the Kenite, who was with the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent under the plain of Zaanannim, which is by Kadesh. Now this Heber was a descendant of Moses' father-in-law. You recall those people came into the land with the children of Israel, but for the most part, they settled in the wilderness somewhere around Arad and Beersheba. They were a nomadic type, Bedouin people is what they called, and they chose the southern country to settle. However, this one guy who we're talking about here had moved up to the northern areas. In Israel today, these Bedouins live all over Israel. Most of them are in the wilderness area, with many Bedouin tents and encampments between Jerusalem and Jericho. If you go up to Galilee, you'll find them encamped near Galilee, and you'll find them encamped in an area near Mount Carmel. It's amazing that this group of people still exists today, in much the same way that they did historically, in tents, with their livestock living all around them. So it's not unusual to have a Bedouin in the northern part. Now in this story, this one Bedouin had left his normal habitat down in the wilderness area and had come up towards the upper end of the Sea of Galilee near Kadesh, and he came up there to warn the king. Now evidently he had a good relationship with this king of Hazor, this Jabin, and he warned him that the children of Israel had gathered together there at Tabor. Now Heber, the Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had severed himself from the rest of the Kenites, pitched his tent in the plain, which is by Kadesh. And he showed Sisera, this was a captain, that Barak was gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera gathered together all his chariots, all 900 chariots of iron, and the people that were with him, from Harosheth of the Gentiles unto the river Kishon. Now this river Kishon really isn't much of a river. It's more like what we in Missouri would call a stream. In eastern Kentucky we'd call it a creek. There is not much water in it today, so it's really hard to see. You can see the green trees that grow around the banks, but there isn't really much water in Kishon. So he gathered together with his 900 iron chariots at Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, Up, for this is the day in which the Lord has delivered Sisera into your hand. Is not the Lord gone out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with the 10,000 men after him. And the Lord discomfited Sisera and all of his chariots and all of his host with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. Now in the Song of Deborah, which we'll read in the next chapter, we find that God did this by sending kind of a flood. It says that the chariots got bogged down in the mire and they just couldn't move. So their troops became easy targets for Barak's infantry. Of course, they came pouring down off Mount Tabor and attacked them right there. This happened right by the Kishon. So Barak attacked them and destroyed them. But the Sisera jumped out of his chariot and ran away. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host unto Harosheth of the Gentiles. And all of the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. Howbeit Sisera had fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Now the interesting part about this is that this is the tent of the same guy who had warned Sisera about where the Israelites were camped. And Jael is his wife. For there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera, and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, and don't fear. And when he had turned in to her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said unto her, Give me a drink, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him a drink, and covered him. Again he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? That thou shalt say, No. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail out of the tent, took a hammer in her hand, and she went softly unto him, and she smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it unto the ground. For he was fast asleep and weary, and so he died instantly. This is a pretty gruesome scene, isn't it? I mean, he must have fallen asleep. I'm sure he did because he was so tired from the running. She basically just snuck in and drove a nail through his head into the ground. Wow. Now there's some question here as to the deceitfulness of Jael. Now there are a lot of possibilities here, one of them being that because there was a friendship involved here, that when Sisera first arrived, she recognized him because her husband had gone and warned him that Barak was at Mount Tabor with all of his troops. It could be that she was genuine in her offer of hospitality, but when maybe she got fearful, telling him, about to come into the tent, and then him telling her to go back and lie to anybody that came along while he hid. And she may have realized from that he'd lost the battle, his troops had been defeated, and that he was on the losing side. Now, being aware of that, she may have been determined on her own part to save herself and her family, and she may have decided she wanted to get on the winning side. So she took this action. And I don't want to get too harsh about it, especially related to Jael. We really don't know what the circumstances were there. But there is that very real possibility that it could have been because of the friendship and the fact that she wanted to turn around and be on the winning side. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet and said unto him, Come, and I will show you the man that you are looking for. And when he came into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So God subdued on that day Jabin the king of Canaan before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered, and prevailed against Jabin the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jamin the king of Canaan. Now it's interesting to me that Barak himself was the one chasing Sisera. Didn't just send his troops out to do it, he went on his own. Now, I can't even imagine the excitement that would come with such a complete victory over such huge odds, 900 chariots and all those men. It would be obvious, I think, to Barak that God's hand was in all of this. Now, based on that, he kept pushing forward, and I'm sure it was to complete the mission. And that was based on the promise of a complete victory from God. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to take a look at the Song of Deborah, which has a little more detail related to what actually happened that day. So that concludes this. This has been chapter 4 of the book of Judges. This is Don Stevens. God bless you.